mendelspod.com, advancing life science research, connecting people and ideas.
Today we're joined by Matt Landry. He's the Chief Technology Officer at Biomatters, a bioinformatics company headquartered in New Zealand. Today's show is sponsored by Ingenuity Variant Analysis. Identify causal variants from human sequencing data in just hours. With variant analysis, you can interrogate your variants from multiple biological perspectives, explore different biological hypotheses, and identify the most promising variants for follow-up. Welcome to the program, Matt.
Hello.
So why New Zealand?
Good question. Sense of adventure and serendipity.
But a bioinformatics company, I mean, this is something totally new happening. Mm-hmm. And so the company was already established there. And
that's right. Yeah, Biomatters was started around 2004 as one of the researchers at the University of Auckland had this brainstorm about building a desktop application that would tie together all the difficult to use algorithms and eliminate all those complex command line interfaces and make it look beautiful and easy to use, and that was the genesis of the company.
Okay, so that's Genius,
yep.
Your software you're talking about.
That's
so
right.
What is the focus of Biomatters?
Our mission really is to try and make the life of biological researchers as easy as possible when they're interacting with their data. We've kind of entered an era where we're digitizing biology, and then you need to do something with it, and that's really appealing to me as an engineer because the quest of semiconductors has been to digitize things as quickly as possible and get it into a computational realm, and that's what bioinformatics is all about. And our mission is to make that as easy to work with as possible for the biologists.
So user-friendly is what you're really going for here.
That's right. That's right. We we don't go out of our way to, though we have, but our mission isn't to develop new algorithms or new analytical techniques, because those are by and large being developed by the researchers themselves. But what we do focus on is being able to make the software as easy to use, the user experience as seamless as possible, the workflow is intuitive, and the visualization of such a high degree of quality that you get greater insight than you would otherwise expect.
So what's an example of where you're making headway with this software with your customers?
I guess probably the best example of headway is just the look of sheer delight that we see when we encounter people when we're at conferences, things like that. I've never encountered that in any of my past lives in semiconductors. People who practically run up to you at a conference and tell you about the sheer joy and pleasure they have at using your software because it was so easy for them to use, and it was they could show something to a friend or a colleague and get them to drill down on the data and look at it and understand it, and it was just a pleasure. And I haven't encountered that anywhere else.
So it's like, thank you, you just made my life so much better.
That's right. That's right. And that's so we've over time, over the course of the last 8 or 9 years or so the company's been around, it's been kind of various points where we try to figure out what we're really best at, and I think the visualization aspect and usability of it is something that only since the iPhone came out have people realized is one of the most important technical elements of any technology solution.
The visualization. Now, let me just sort of pull back from that and say, what if I feel sort of constrained by that and I like to do my own command line stuff as a bioinformatician?
The Genious software is probably not the solution for you. Of course, I can say, it has public APIs that are out there, so you can develop your own extensible add-ons to it. But then again, the person that you're describing would just write their own, Perl scripts or whatever. And that's why, again, the distinction between a solution for biologists and is not a solution for bioinformaticians.
Okay, so they don't have to be a bioinformatician to use your software. Is the main point.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
During this series, I want to get a feel for the bioinformatician, the different companies that we're going to be interviewing.
Yep.
And so, what's your path into this? I mean, you'd be called a bioinformatician.
I would probably be called a hack, to be honest. Yeah, my path into this was quite circuitous. I started out as a mixed signal semiconductor design engineer way back in the day, and figured out relatively early on that I much preferred talking to people than sitting in my office and running simulations. I was better at it than the actual design, and ended up focusing more on the technology marketing and architectural design, which, you know, as every engineer knows, the architects are just people who are pretending to be engineers. We get to draw boxes on paper and arrows and lines. And from there, I ended up getting up into medical electronic design, another higher layer of abstraction from the semiconductors, embedded system design, so there's more software, and finally kind of made the leap into working for a biotech software company.
And so you've picked up the bio since you've been at Biomatters.
What I have picked up, yeah, has been since Biomatters. I've had to reach deep into the back recesses of my brain in order to dredge up my molecular biology courses from high school. But you know, I've picked up enough to understand the context of most biology discussions, and at least for me, the most important thing is understanding, you know, what the implications are for the technology or for the business environment. And business environments are, you know, there's a lot of analogies and similarities no matter what the industry is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm curious about that. Are there other industries that you've looked to as a model for this? Like, okay, we've already done this before over here, so let's not do it again.
You know, it's not surprising, and it's probably inevitable, but I really end up comparing a lot of things to the semiconductor industry. And I think, you know, especially with all the discussion and talk about next-gen or third-gen sequencing, you know, this to me looks a lot like the maturation of technology that happened in semiconductors, you know, decades and decades ago. And you know how it changes things. You know, a lot of it has to do with the commoditization of the core technology. You know, we can't, and I think, you know, many people rarely admit, we can't even imagine what we do with a $1 genome. Never mind a $1,000 genome. What would you do with a $1 genome? No idea, right? We have no idea, but we all know that something is going to happen. That's going to somehow fundamentally change things that we can't even imagine, just because the economies of scale and the cost of working with that sort of commodity data is, you know, it just opens up infinite possibilities.
Yeah, I was watching this program on PBS recently about Silicon Valley, and Bob Noyce, who started Intel, and one of the first, he's like one of the two inventors of the integrated circuit. And at Intel, one day he walked in and he told the staff, he said, "We're lowering the price below cost." And they looked at him like, "What happened to you today?"
Right. Have you talked to an economist later?
Yeah, but that's part of what drove, you know, the revolution in personal computing. Right, and the whole computer revolution there is that, first of all, the circuits had to be cheap enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. And then now look around you. We probably don't even know what all the microcontrollers are around us. We're swimming in electromagnetic radiation because there's all these extremely low cost. They're so cheap. Why wouldn't you put them in there? You know, just the other day I was talking to somebody who's building a piece of hardware. You know, they're working on some assay technology, and they need to build some hardware, and they're just over-designing the platform, adding additional capabilities into it because they want to have options, and everything's so low cost that, you know, why wouldn't you? Mm-hmm. And that's the same sort of mindset that I think is at this stage driving the call for whole genome sequencing into medical care, right? There's so much that we don't know what it does, or we don't fully understand how it will apply in a medical setting, but when the cost is low enough, why wouldn't you collect the data? And then when you do know, then you can make use of it.
So you mentioned commoditization.
Mm-hmm.
Are you seeing that in bioinformatics? I mean, maybe sequencing, we just did a series on sequencing, and sort of the general view that we heard was, okay, this year sequencing may have reached a much more stable place. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe it's going towards the commoditization. Do you see that in bioinformatics, or is it still so new that there's...
I think so, yes.
That it's still new, there's a lot of...
No, I think it's commoditization, but like most technologies, there's just an ever-shifting bar of where the commoditization and maturation is versus what's new. Mm-hmm. You know, especially when you're talking about research, by definition, the researchers are doing something unique, and any computational techniques they have to come up with in order to accomplish that will be unique and, you know, therefore not commodity. You know, but when I first got in this industry, people were still talking about wanting to hang on to image files off of sequencers because you might want to go back and reanalyze them, right? Nobody talks about that anymore. and then
so there is
fast
some
queues
status.
are starting to go away, right? So the barrier of what people will pay for changes because of how frequently it's being used and what the expectations are for what's freely available or what is sufficiently low complexity now that it's not worth much. And you see that shift with bioinformatics, and it's inevitable.
So speaking of sequencing again, the theme this year at AGBT was the importance of long reads and structural variation.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean anything for bioinformatics, or that's fine, that's business as usual?
Yeah, I guess it becomes another analytical computational technique that needs to be taken into account.
Well, what about the new nanopore technologies coming out? Do you see any challenge for bioinformatics there?
Not necessarily. One of the biggest implications I think for the nanopore technologies is another bump in data generation, but those are old problems, not really new problems. Any new sequencing technology will have its own idiosyncrasies that need to be worked into the alignment, mapping, assembly algorithms. But those are relatively well-trodden paths, and those will get solved quickly as well.
So what's your biggest challenge as the Chief Technology Officer of Biomatters?
I think my biggest challenge is to pay attention to the macro trends that don't necessarily have anything to do with bioinformatics itself. But such as how does, and this is where I'm at today, how does the availability of commodity cloud technology, like what Amazon Web Services makes available, or Rackspace, how does that affect the business of bioinformatics or the business of computational biology?
How does it?
I think we are entering what I've started calling Bioinformatics 3.0, where Bioinformatics 1.0 is command line, Perl scripts. Bioinformatics 2.0 is the monolithic desktop application that has every feature and functionality you can think of all wrapped up into one tool to manage your data, analyze it, and visualize it, and print it out. Bioinformatics 3.0, I think in the world of remote cloud-based technology with infinitely scalable storage and computational capability, looks more like the app economy that we've seen emerge in the last 5 years.
So you think that could be a model here, like the iPhone and the apps?
Yeah, so my fear or my suspicion is it's not that it could be a model, that it will be the model because it just makes the most sense. And why does it make sense? Because I think one of the fundamental benefits of the app economy, or the small app design methodology, is that you have little apps that are killer at what they do. They do one or a very small number of things really, really well, and it's the best at it. And that's something that's very difficult to do with an all-in-one package, because you've got this ever-moving bar. You always have new, unique needs, and if you have one big tool that's trying to do it all, it's always going to fall short for somebody, and it's a war of attrition to try and fit everybody's needs into it. But if you can focus on developing small apps, and you have a rich ecosystem of people that are all interacting in that environment, then you have an ability to fill a lot more of the gaps and create higher quality product that people will continue to make use of well after it's been finished, polished, and just kind of put on the shelf to sell and not think about it. So I just think it's an inevitability. This is the time for the internet to start disrupting the old way of doing bioinformatics.
Okay, so I have two questions come to mind. First of all, you need a really strong basic platform for the app model.
That's right.
Any idea on what or who that?
There are several emerging all of a sudden. It's like we're in a little bubble right now, but there are several platforms that are emerging. Illumina's base space probably being the most recognizable right now. And it has all the elements in place, I think, for that sort of app economy to emerge. The storage capability, the ease of pushing data up into their environment,
most sequencing is being done on the Illumina.
That's right. Yeah, I mean that's a big advantage they're going to have that will be difficult for others to overcome. But then again, there's other data that's not sequencing data. That's of course important. Multiple modalities are a reality. It's not all going to be sequenced data all the time. And then they've talked about the building a payment system into it as well, which is one of the vital elements of a rich app economy. And they're not the only ones. There are several other companies that are building similar things, or even other informatics companies that are trying to build web-based tools that implicitly have to incorporate such platform development in order to be effective anyway.
Secondly, how would that affect the model of your business? Is it a dramatic shift?
It's not. Nothing's ever really that dramatic. It's going to be a long tail, right? Because tablets are outselling laptops right now, but most of us wouldn't get rid of our laptops. We use them, and we use them for very specific things that we don't necessarily use tablets for. So this shift will be similar. There's going to be a long tail in desktop informatics, and there's probably some uses that there will always be a demand for desktop informatics. But I'm looking at the bigger trend here, right? Where does the volume go? Even if one segment of the industry remains static, then there could be another massive growing. The pie is getting larger, and you want to be in the part that's growing. And I think that's where it'll go. So, as a company, what does that mean for us? We just have to anticipate it and make reasonable investments at the right time. It's kind of the typical innovator's dilemma, ultimately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I recently had Christoph Lambert, from CEO of Golden Helix,
mm-hmm.
on, and he felt like there was a lot of commoditization going on, and it was too fast, actually. I mean, he said it makes Moore's Law look slow. The industry's cannibalizing themselves.
That's right.
Constantly, that you can't even sort of make a profit off a product once you release it.
Right. Yeah, I think that's not to get into politics here, but that's one of the inevitable consequences of having a lot of government funding going into industries, is that it sets up perverse incentives, and the market isn't always able to decide what the outcomes are, or all the rational choices aren't necessarily being made at the right times. But
mm-hmm.
yeah, that's probably a fair assessment. Yeah.
I'm curious about the state of genomic medicine in New Zealand. Do you have any feel for that?
I do. It's so New Zealand has an interesting healthcare environment, because it's nationalized healthcare, and they are probably one of the most completely electronic record systems in the world. They have several different regions, and each of them have full electronic medical records. You go into a doctor, and they can sit at their computer and pull up every single lab test that you've had, start looking through your radiology results. I mean, it's all right there. It's really cool.
Which puts them quite far ahead.
It does, and they have it's called the National Health ID, and so everybody has a health identity number, and so all the records are tagged to that number, and they have centralized databases where if not the records themselves, but at least pointers to where the records are stored, so you can access that. But what does that mean for genomic medicine? Well, the other side of a nationalized healthcare system is, it's very, very focused on cost effectiveness at the population scale. So that makes them a little bit less likely to take on some of the newer potential, genomic assays, markers, or solutions for diagnostic odysseys. Those sort of things don't fit within the national schedule for what are approved healthcare procedures. And that's, I think that's just one of the facets of having a nationalized healthcare system, is it's going to wait until such technologies are proven and not just speculatively beneficial.
So in the beginning, it could be probably more conservative, but then once they do adopt some of these assays, it's nationwide.
That's right.
And so bingo, it's just, whereas
That's right.
Here we may have a research, hospital who's going for something, but doesn't mean it's going to translate into this, next city over, or the next state over.
Exactly, right? And so you have centers of excellence where people want to go and get treated there because they know they can get that sort of treatment. Whereas you have New Zealand, and when they do make that decision, it's available to the entire population. The central pharmaceutical purchasing agency will make sure that the costs are extremely low for any related pharmaceuticals. And so, it's a very different model than we're used to in the United States, and it's been interesting to kind of watch it in play. And that's where I think we lose sight of here in the U.S. that while we do have some of the best healthcare in the world, there's this great disparity that you don't get when you have a nationalized system, because while the most advanced procedures aren't necessarily easily available, or you have to go to a parallel private system to get them. What is available is all recognized as international good standards of care. It's all solid medicine, and it's all equally available for the entire population. and that, overall, as we can see looking at the statistics, contributes to having a healthy population.
Yeah, Lee Hood and others have told me that they see the adoption of genomic medicine first happening in a small country, so sort of a smaller population and one with a national health service.
Right.
And so I'm just wondering, New Zealand seems like it might be a good candidate.
Yeah, they may be. They've certainly, in conversations with medical researchers over there, certainly the practicing clinicians are thinking about it, and it often, everybody has the best of intentions, and so then you start running up against what are the bureaucratic hurdles. They're not made up. They're there to make prudent purchasing decisions. But you do have countries like in the Netherlands that have similar population sizes and have started making some of those forays into deploying genomic medicine.
Yes.
Yeah.
How do we change the culture in the medical ecosystem?
Ooh, I don't know.
That was my big bomb question.
I don't know. I really wondered that, the more I've been thinking about it, is it so much that we need to change the medical culture, or is it that there needs to be just a better meeting of minds of the, scientific promise that genomic research is offering? Does it need to be a little bit more realistic with what the actual delivery of care looks like? Because the medical system is huge. It's very complex. It's evolved, on its own over hundreds of years. So, it's not going to change overnight. And there are often a lot of good reasons why certain practices are done or certain checks and balances are in place. And, just because you may have a scientific reason to want to make an immediate change, there may be completely legitimate social or organizational reasons that you can't roll it out. And so I think the path will have to be, better understanding on both sides of where we're trying to get to.
So most important trend in bioinformatics this year?
I'm hoping it's going to be the deployment of more app economy type applications. I really want to see the enrichment of the base spaces or the DNAnexus type ecosystems out there.
DNAnexus just came out with that.
Yeah, that's right, and they're another one of the genomics infrastructure or genomics platforms. They're another one in that ecosystem, and I think this will be a good year to see those get traction and prove the utility.
They're both using the cloud extensively for the storage.
That's right.
Have you started thinking beyond the cloud?
Beyond
like
the cloud,
that next generation?
Not specifically. I guess the next generation is, at least for the foreseeable future, more about easier and easier access to cloud services, whatever those may be. I mean, cloud's a really generic term anyway. What we're really after is kind of self-serve storage and computation at a pay-per-use kind of price. And some of those pricing models may change. The types of technology available may change, but what's beyond self-serve, predictive. You don't even have to request what resources you need. They're just there before you need them, perhaps. And
further virtualization somehow.
Yeah, I mean, we're already pretty virtualized as it is.
It is.
That's right. So really the question is how seamless and easy is it to create those virtual environments? And what we're trying to do as an informatics company, and the platforms like BaseSpace are trying to do, is make that invisible to the users, so the users don't have to think about the virtualization, right? So what's the next phase? Well, it becomes easier for us providers to make use of that virtualization without thinking about it. That sort of thing that Amazon's always working on. Adding utility that somebody had to develop middleware to accomplish. They just added into their stack, and now it's available as part of the standard service offering. So we'll see more of that. I think we've got a long way to go. The cloud, or at least the cloud as we discuss it today, is a relatively new concept. Amazon only came on the scene, 5 years ago.
Matt Landry, he's the CTO of Biomatters. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Today's show is sponsored by Ingenuity Variant Analysis. Identify causal variants from human sequencing data in just hours. With variant analysis, you can interrogate your variants from multiple biological perspectives, explore different biological hypotheses, and identify the most promising variants for follow-up.